and you can actually kind of see behind me. It's hard. They're doing like a little carnival thing out there in the parking lot of this place. But we're here to see Abigail, and just thinking about it, like, I believe this is from the producers of Ready or Not, so I'm kind of hoping that it has that type of feel to it, where it's not completely serious. It's not, maybe it goes a little bit off the wall, and it's just fun. So we're gonna have to see what happens when we get in there, and like I did like the last video for the coffee table, I'm going to do spoiler free, and then we'll talk spoilers after that break. So yeah, I guess I'll see you in just a little bit after we have seen Abigail, and maybe I can get a better shot of that stuff outside. Games and stuff like that, people can go and do those things and rides, and I wouldn't trust that shit for the world, to be honest. Hey, what's up, everybody? As you can see, I've got my little buddy here, Charlie. I don't know if you've ever seen Charlie on a video before, but she's here. She's hanging out with me for a little bit, at least while we talk about Abigail. So, like I said last time, I'm going to do this in two parts. I actually kind of preferred doing it like this because there's a lot of crap that I want to talk about, and I definitely need to spoil it, but I don't want to do it in just the way, like, in the basic review of everything. Like I said, try to keep this part somewhat short. Abigail itself, I have such mixed emotions about this movie. One that I did enjoy, it is rated R, and it can get quite gory. There's a couple of scenes that were ridiculous in the amount of gore that it had in it. Some really great effects. It's more CGI than anything else, but there is one cool kind of CGI scene that I liked that involved Abigail herself. Acting wise, I think we're fine for the most part. The young actress that played Abigail, pretty good. I think she was pretty good. I don't think she was great. I don't think that she was terrible. I think she was a little better than good. Basically, it's kind of what I'm trying to say here, because there were a couple of times where I was like, I don't get it. And I guess beforehand, because my cousin brought his kids with him, and one of them, she's like, I'm not going to get scared, and I'm not going to get scared because she was in Matilda the musical. I was like, she was in Matilda the musical? There was a Matilda musical? Why didn't I know about this? But I guess that's where she comes from. At least that's where she recognized her from. In terms of scares, there's not a whole lot. There's a couple of scenes that I could see getting people, but I never really felt like it was going to be an issue for anybody. I definitely would say this is not for emetophobes. There is one scene that it can be maybe a little difficult, but it's one of those things where, again, it's CG in the way that it's done, and that always kind of upsets me in general when you're doing even like scenes like that. If we do it in CG, like, oh, why are we even trying to do this? The only other thing that I'll say, without going into the whole, us doing the whole spoiler thing and me spoiling everything right now, is that it's an uneven movie. It's very uneven. The beginning of the movie is very, very slow. It was almost too slow for me. From what I saw from the trailers to what got put on the screen in the first 20 minutes of the movie, I was not feeling the vibe. I was not feeling how it was going into it. I understand that it's a lot of characters, and we're introducing all of the characters to the movie, and I didn't get it. I didn't get the beginning. I wish that it sped up a little faster than it did. But once it does speed up, and there's one character I absolutely hate. I don't know why he's in this movie. I don't know why the character's being played like that. I don't get it. I really don't. I really don't get that character at all. And if you've seen the movie, I think you know what character I might be talking about. And then the middle of the movie is so much fun. Oh my God, is the middle of the movie so much fun. It's good. I was like, okay, slow beginning. Oh my God, I was smiling at things. The comedy really hit, and the action is there, and the blood and violence are there, and everything's great. And then it's like a bus going downhill and there's a baby that's about to cross the street in a baby carriage and it's going full on and you think it's going to run into that baby carriage and it's just going to be like, oh my God, I don't want to watch, but you're kind of anticipating this big explosion of blood and violence and oh my God, it's going to do it. But then the bus just comes to a halt and stops, not barely missing the baby by like 50 feet, right? It stops halfway down the hill and it completely stops. The ending of this movie is just so, it's so out of left field. There are things that I get. There are things I don't understand. The movie itself, in terms of the way that it does its lore and it tries to do vampire lore, some of it works, some of it doesn't, and some of it doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. You know, there's a couple of, and I have to talk about it in the spoilers because I was just like, but it takes some weird 180 at the point that it's starting to do the ending of the movie, and then it does something at the very end of the movie that I'm just like, what the fuck is going on? I don't get it. You had such a good act 2 and you wasted it. You wasted this excellent act 2 with the ending that you gave me. So it's, you know, I don't know. Like I wanted it to be like Act 2. Like when I saw the trailers and I thought that's what it was going to be. You know, it comes from some of the people involved with Ready or Not. I was really excited about that because Ready or Not is a great movie, totally unexpected, and did the right thing. It did exactly what I thought this movie was going to do, where that had a little bit of a slow beginning, but once it's like put its pedal to the metal, it plowed through that baby, right? And it was shocking and it was unexpected and it was fun. You know, you didn't think that you were going to have fun with it, but hey, you had fun. You shouldn't really have fun with that type of thing, but hey, you did, right? Where this, you're having fun and it just rams into a brick wall or just completely stops and it does something totally different and it shouldn't have done that. I just don't get it. I really don't. It's uneven, it's entertaining, it has highlights, it has a couple of lowlights that are in it. It's just I don't know why they went in the direction that they did. And I think that ultimately hurts the film, right? Did I enjoy it? Yeah, I enjoyed it. I'd say overall I enjoyed it a good healthy amount, right? If it wasn't for the middle, if it continued like it did in the beginning, because the beginning, I think the issue is it's more serious than it needs to be. And then you get into the second part of the movie where it's fun and it's got the comedy and some of the seriousness, and then it goes back to kind of being serious with a big change that happens at the end of the movie. I feel fair enough saying that this is a solid, 3 out of 5, exploders. I think that it's solid 3 out of 5. I think there are going to be some people that are like, nah, this is more like a 2. Other people are going to be, no, this is a 4. I really enjoyed it. I think it's good. If it stayed like the center, I could see it becoming a 4 for me. I could see it be really fun, and I'm totally into it, and I'm totally down with it. But because it does what it does, it just threw me for a loop. And then combining that with the slow intro, I can't go any higher than a 3. I think that it has potential to do more. I think that they just missed the mark. Like they didn't land the ending is ultimately what it did, right? So that's a general of what I thought about the movie. So if you've seen it before, please let me know in the comments down below. If this is where you're stopping the video for the time being, I want to remind you to please like and subscribe to the channel. I really appreciate all the new followers that are there. And, if you stay for a little bit, you're going to run into the spoilers. So a fair warning right now, we're going to do a whole spoiler chat just like I did with a coffee table. So good luck avoiding the spoilers if you're watching that part for that. But if not, thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch you guys next time on another one of these movies reviews. Okay? Bye, guys. Okay, so is everybody gone that was not wanting spoilers? I'm just making sure that everybody's here, that if you're watching this, it's spoiler time. So I'm not giving anything away in general by talking about at least the basic premise of the movie, because it's kind of giving away all in the trailers. Basically, you have six people that go and they kidnap a young girl for somebody, and then they're told that they got to watch the house and her, right, and for 24 hours to find out that she's a vampire, and chaos ensues. Right? Can they survive the night now that they know that Abigail is a vampire? Basic premise of the movie. And so I think that we have a decent setup to the six people that we're going to be following for the majority of the movie. So we've got Joey, we've got Frank, we've got Sammy, we've got Rickles, we've got Dean, and we've got Peter, right? And all those are pseudonyms, and they're given to them by Giancarlo Esposito, who plays Lambert. And Lambert basically, he's telling them what they need to do, and that he takes all of their cell phones when they get to the house. And again, the very beginning of the movie is interesting enough. I think that's perfect, like how they're all getting together. But right away, so Angus Cloud is in this movie. And Angus Cloud, you probably know from Euphoria if you know him at all. Unfortunately, last year he passed away. And I don't know, because I'm not looking up any like trivia or any type of things about it. I don't know if they finished his, like if he finished his role in this movie, or if he they had like a body double do some of the things later on in the film. I really don't know. At times it feels like that, like thinking back to it, but it's possible he did. His character Dean, I could not stand. I just, you know, he's a pretty good actor overall in Euphoria. He's pretty good, but in general, just this character, and I think it's just the way the character is being done. It's just not a good character. I just don't. It's funny because there's a radio show that I listen to as a podcast, and one of the hosts on there has a friend, and the friend is named Half Baked. And this guy reminds me of that dude, right? And it feels like he's a little bit slower. He's not as methodical, like in terms of his thought. Like everybody else is like quick-witted and relatively smart, and though you could make a case for Peter in the way that they do everything, but in general, it's just like he's got one scene that I thought was relatively funny in the way that it was done. But overall, the character annoyed the shit out of me, and I actually was a lot happier when the character died, because I'm like, great, I don't have to see this guy anymore. Because I always play the game, and I bet you a lot of people do too. When you get into a horror movie, who's the first to go? And it's obvious that it's going to be Dean, just because of the way the character works and what they put him into and those things. So the beginning of the movie, it's relatively solid. You're getting the crew together. You got Joey, she's sitting outside and she's sucking on a lollipop, and she's kind of fiddling with the plastic that's there and puts in her mouth, and it's got good shots. And you're also watching shots of Abigail doing her like ballet recital. And I think it's a good like setup, because you're kind of meeting the crew. She's getting picked up by Frank and Peter, and they're traveling in the car, and then we jump over to Sammy and Dean is just kind of oblivious to everything that's going on, because he believes he's the best wheelman around, but he's busy asking Sammy, hey, you got a boyfriend? And she's trying to like hack into the security cameras and the security team. You also have Rickles along with him, and he's basically perched outside of the place that they're going to go into to kidnap the person. They don't know who it is yet. And he's got his like sniper rifle ready to go and shoot, anything that happens that's negative. So like the setup in terms of how they're going to kidnap Abigail. And then when they get into the room and they figure out that Abigail happens to be a little girl, and then it's like, oh shit, you didn't tell me it was a girl. And Frank's like, looks at Joey, and Joey's like, hey, are you going to back out? Because if you want to back out now. But you're not going to back out. And then, of course, she doesn't. So like I said, I think that the beginning of the movie, that just this part, pretty good. And even when they get to the house and they meet Lambert for the first time, the scene where they get their names is really funny, because they start asking questions about the girl. And he's like, don't ask any questions. You don't need to know anything about anybody. You don't need to know what their names are. Don't do that stuff. And then I can't remember if it's Dean or it's one of the other characters. And he's like, well, you want names? Fine. And then he names everybody, right? So the names are all given to them by Lambert, and they have actual names, and I don't really remember. I only remember one, which is Jessica, and I believe that's Sammy. But, you have that, and then you have another good scene with everybody, and where Dean is talking about, oh yeah, I'm a good judge of character. I know everybody, and he goes around the room and says exactly what they do, and then Joey like gets up. She's like, well, you're completely wrong. You didn't get a single one of these right. It's like I know what you are. Basically, he's like, yeah, I'm the best damn wheel. He's like, she's like, you're not a professional. He's like, what do you mean? I'm the best damn wheelman there is around. She's like, yeah, you're a good driver, but you're not a professional like the rest of us are, right? And then she goes one by one and gives everybody their tropes, like how Frank is probably a disgraced detective, that he went into the seedy underworld and liked that life so much, or he's an ex-detective and somehow got out of his job, right? And how Rickles, the when he's given the name, it's funny because he's like, oh, you're very imaginative with the names. He's like, all right, okay, Don Rickles, that's going to be your name. And then that's why they call him Rickles, which I thought that was pretty goddamn funny. So she's going through, she says, Rickles, oh, you used to be in the military, and you're not giving me any, well, no. She says to him, like, he's like, I don't got any money, because they're all like saying, oh, $100 if you can say this stuff. And so he looks at her, he's like, I don't got any money. And she's like, all I'm going to say to you is Semper Fi, and you're getting off easy, and then walks away. But this is a pretty good setup scene in the way that she's like learning the characters, and none of them deny anything she says, even to the point like Sammy, oh yeah, you got into hacking because you were bored and you're the kid of rich kids or rich adults, so you're just a little rich kid that thinks that they can be a hacker. And with with Peter, she's kind of like, you used to be the muscle, and so that's why you're here, because you're the muscle for this thing, right? And everybody's quite amazed that she was able to peg them somewhat, right? And not peg in that way, but actually peg the personalities throughout the room. And so it's an interesting setup, and she's also from Lambert. She is also the only one that's supposed to go in and speak with Abigail. And it's hard when based upon the trailers, what Abigail is. And this is with a setup like they're doing at the beginning of the movie, where it's very mysterious, and the way that Abigail is playing off things, it would have been better for us to never know. That say things are happening, and then just show shots of Abigail being scared in the trailer and just cutting down those things. Not so much like I got interested in the movie because, little girl vampire. Well, okay. It's not quite Interview with the Vampire. It's not quite Kirsten Dunst, but it still seems like, okay, that's interesting. But the way that it's played out, I think the trailer really hurt the movie. I really felt that they could have not mentioned that at all. And they could have just done a little thing like, oh my God, people are dying. They're in these situations. And really good, quick cuts just to get people interested. Well, why is this all going on? And they didn't mean to kidnap a kid, and something's coming after them. And maybe they even said vampire or something like that. But to have the reveal in the movie be Abigail as the vampire, like that scene is really set up to surprise the audience, but it really doesn't, right? Because you already know, because it's a cool little scene. Again, they talk around. She goes upstairs and she goes to Abigail, and Abigail's like, oh, they're not going to hurt me, are they? You guys aren't going to hurt me. And they have her like blindfold and handcuff, and Joey feels really bad because she's obviously got a kid, because she looks at her phone before she gives it away, and there's a picture of her and her son. And she's, it's obvious that, there's something to do that, hey, we kidnapped a little girl, and I don't want to treat her like a normal victim, and so she removes the blindfold, and she readjusts the cuffs so that it's not behind her back, it's in front of her. And, and basically Abigail's like, oh, can you make sure that nobody hurts me? And she's like, I'll make you one better than just promise. And then she puts out her pinky and makes a pinky promise with Abigail that nobody's going to hurt you. This shit comes back and makes me angry. But we'll talk about it when we get to it. And so, like, again, like, I think these like little setups are cool, but she's a fucking vampire, so it ruins what they're doing. So eventually, she just wants to know, she's like, who is this, girl's father? Because of the way that she's talking, because she's like, I'm sorry for the things that are going to happen to you. She says that at one point. And that's when, Joey goes and tells Frank that, hey, I know a threat when I hear one, and she's kind of threatening us. So who's this kid's father? And, he's acting like he knows, but he really doesn't know. So he goes up to the bedroom and he intimidates Abigail, stupidly showing his face because he didn't know she wasn't blindfolded anymore. And so, and which Joey screwed them all on that pooch, somewhat. And so he gets it out of Abigail that, hey, her father is Lazard. I believe that's the name. I just kept thinking about the goddamn, Lazard in the NFL, and that, and the father itself, when he pops up, it's funny because I thought it was, I'll explain. I thought it was Jeremy Irons, but it's somebody else. And so you have him, like freak out because he heard this name and this is a big crime kingpin. And so he decides, I'm going to fucking leave. And then Joey goes up to him like, okay, who's the father? I need to know. And so then they go through the whole thing of, well, Lazard is this big, kingpin. He's going to kill us all, and they all decide that, because she knows his face, that they're all going to be able to find him. So, but, what's worse? Getting completely wiped out later on, or getting the money and make sure she has, like, he has his daughter, and then they can just get away with it, right? So they decide to all stay. They're like, okay, we'll deal with it. We'll stay the night. We'll do all this fun stuff, whatever. And then the evening comes, and this is where we get our first death, which is Dean, who is, and the only funny time with Dean, really, because, like, we're going through the different things, and it's an interesting use of Woody Woodpecker, and I feel like it's used because it's Woody Woodpecker with a ghost. I don't remember what the episode is, but they're, like, doing something where the ghost is, like, laughing in his face, and then Woody Woodpecker goes and laughs back as menacingly in the ghost's face at the same time. And I really would like to know the significance of what using that cartoon is, other than I feel like it's public domain and they can use it, right? Like, spooky scene, Woody Woodpecker. But it's funny because, like, she's starting to, like, relax. Sammy has started to relax, gets back to the bed, and then all of a sudden, a lighter flicks on, and it's Dean in the bed with his, like, bear mask, and scares the living shit out of her. And that's, like, a decent jump in the movie, decent jump scare, but I don't feel like there's enough tension to, like, really get you drawn in, other than the distraction of Woody Woodpecker. I was more interested in figuring out what's the significance to even really be, like, aware of the tension that's being done during this scene. So it's just really interesting that we would have that, and then we actually have, like, a relative, because he's like, what was funny about it was like, oh, it's just a prank, I'm trying to prank you. And then she gets upset, and he's like, what, I wasn't trying to scare you. But you were, you dumb motherfucker. Like, you were trying to scare her. That's the whole point of putting on the mask and randomly doing, oh, I'm gonna prank you. If you didn't think that you were pranking her, why the fuck would you do that? Like, it doesn't make any sense. So he leaves. He goes down to the kitchen, go get something to eat, and that's where, like, he hears something coming from, like, the little basement that they've got there, and it turns out to be a rat. And he's like, oh, it's just a fat fucking rat. No, that's why they call us all rats, because we're all rats, actually, that's explained by later, I think, by Rickles, where he calls everybody a rat pack. I get it. Or it might be Peter that says that joke. And so this is where the movie kind of starts picking up a little bit. It hasn't picked up yet. It really starts picking up when Abigail reveals herself. So he turns around, he gets wiped out. And then Sammy comes downstairs because she hears the yelling, and you don't watch him get killed. And this is where I thought, oh, great. This is going to be one of those PG-13 things. We're going to see things happen off camera, and we're not really going to get any blood and guts. Ah, great. And unbeknownst to me, not realizing that the movie actually was rated R, I just assumed that the movie itself was rated PG-13. But hey, I can be wrong quite a bit of the time. So you have that, and then she gets downstairs, and she sees him, and his head falls off. Effective, not super scary, a little bit shocking, but that causes everybody to, like, oh my God, somebody in this house, it must be Lazard. And Joey goes and talks to Abigail. Abigail basically twists it and says that Frank is the one that's Lazard. And so she gets, questionable about Frank, what's going on here. And it's like, do you really need to have this stuff? And Frank's like, oh, she's playing you. And I'm like, yeah, you can kind of tell that she's playing you. I mean, she's like, it's like she's thinking off the top of her head in the way that she's doing it. Are you going to be okay, Abigail? Yeah, I'm fine. Well, what's wrong, Abigail? Well, Frank said something. What did Frank say? Frank said that he was working for Lazard. Yeah, he's this other person. And it's like, why? So you have that, and the thing is that this part, just, I feel like it all takes too long till we get like the Abigail reveal. So they all get mad at each other. They decide to go and check in on Abigail again, and they're gonna, you know, Frank's like, enough with this. I'm gonna torture her. And Peter, you're the muscle, so Peter, you're going to be the one to do this to get out of her exactly what we need. And Peter goes upstairs and he tries to attack her. That's when Joey steps in and it kind of reveals that she used to be a medic in the army and she can hold her own. She takes down Peter, who's the big buff burly guy. And well, she does meet up. I should say before this happens, they do split up, and she goes and meets with Rickles. And Rickles, unfortunately, is her second death in the movie, to where they like talk about how they need to watch each other. We're gonna hang on. I don't trust these motherfuckers. Let's make sure that everything is solid between us. And as she's gonna go downstairs and round some people up, he's gonna go look over here. All of a sudden, you hear, and then he's like, and she looks at him, and then when she goes over, his face and neck are all like totally scratched up, like and even when they said about Dean, it was like something primal killed him, some type of primal animal killed them. And that's what it kind of looks like with him. So she goes downstairs and she tries to see where Frank is, and that's where she like starts going, oh, Frank, that's what they said, you're working for Lazar and blah blah blah. And I was just like, oh, okay, whatever. And then you have, again, another excellent scene where they're all in there. She detains Peter, like she grabs his arm and like twists it and totally incapacitates him. It's a good little shot, But what's cool is in the background, you see Abigail like contorting her wrist and like breaking her bones so she can slide it out of the cuffs that she's in. And Sammy's in the back and she's watching and she's just looking at like, oh God, what's going, guys, look over there, guys, look. And then that's when it's revealed that Abigail's the vampire and scares the living shit out of everybody. So I feel like that scene is really potent. I think that it works well, but it would have been even better if we didn't know that Abigail was a vampire at all. If we just didn't have that knowledge, you have a really, really, really good scene and a really good reveal that, yeah, okay, this is about vampires, and that's your vampire moment, is that specific moment that's there. So we now have Abigail, and she begins chasing everybody around the house, knocks them down. They all go downstairs, and they're all like, okay, what do we know about vampires? And it's a relatively funny scene. And this is where we get more into like a Ready or Not area for me. And it's just fun. So they're just kind of like joking about, Sammy's like, I don't want to believe it. I don't believe it. Are we really going to do this? And Peter, he's just trying to like close his ears off. And like, I don't want to hear any about this stuff. Vampires aren't real. Well, they're goddamn real, Peter. There's one upstairs and she's killed 2 people in the house and she's going to kill you guys too. So they decide to get weapons, try to go after her, and you have a pretty good like little fight scene between Abigail and Sammy and Peter and Frank. I think that one works out relatively well. She stabs a thing through Frank's leg. I love to, because it's fucking hilarious, because they're like, okay, we're going to get garlic and they turn pole cubes into wooden stakes and we're going to go up there. And Joey's like, I ain't going up there. I'm just going to stay right here because you guys are going to get yourself fucked up. She's smarter than everybody here. And we just have to figure out how to outsmart her. And so, they go upstairs and they try to attack her. And like the first thing is Sammy like pulls up the garlic in front of her, and Abigail grabs the garlic, goes, and then throws it across the room. It's fucking hilarious. I love that. That's when like this movie is great, when it doesn't completely take itself serious. Like the beginning, little serious, but now that Abigail is having fun, we get to have fun along with her. It's fantastic. Like I said, she like. Then you can see the cross doesn't work. She goes and grabs the cross and then starts stabbing the shit out of Peter's chest with his cross, and then goes, like I said, after Frank and stabs him in the leg with a pool cue. And then they all end up downstairs all beaten up, and she like leaves them alone because she's just playing with them. She says in the trailer, I like to play with my food. And so, they all go downstairs, and Joey's like, and then Frank, it's another great line, is, don't you better fucking say I told you so. And he's like, well, it didn't seem like anything worked. He's like, yeah, the wooden stake worked perfectly fine on my fucking leg. And he's still got the stake sticking through his leg and everything like that. So then they decide to, Joey reveals that, hey, we have this serum. And this serum is what's going to, it's what put her out the first time. It works on her we need to put this in her to be able to, trap her and figure out a way out there. Because when they're downstairs too, all of a sudden all the window shutters close. At one point, I think before Rickles dies, he decides he's gonna just leave. He's like, nope, I'm not dealing with this shit. And when he tries to leave, he can't because everything's locked up. And so they want to figure out a way out of this place. And you have them split up. You have Peter and Sammy split up, and you have Frank and Joey split up. And I think at one point during, I don't remember if it's this fight or the next part. It might have been during this fight. Sammy gets bit on her arm, and she's like worried about what's going to happen to her. And nobody knows. And there's another good scene. Like I said, the ending of the good scenes kind of happen after they capture Abigail. I feel that the way that they do things just kind of go like downhill from that point. So they do eventually capture Abigail. There's a decent things. I like it with because Sammy, she finds out that there's she goes to where the pool is, and there's shitloads of dead bodies in the pool, all floating there, bloated, faces torn off, blood drained from their bodies, all floating in a pool. And she's freaking out. And then all of a sudden, a little bit of comedy with Peter where he screams because the pool cue that he has, it gave him a splinter on his finger. And so Joey reprimands him for scream when something real is happening. And so when Abigail does show up behind him in a relatively tension-ish scene, right? Because he's still trying to figure out how to get the splinter out of his finger. And then she just comes into frame in the back. It's well done. I like the way that is. It's not necessarily the most scary thing. I think if she just randomly started moving towards, and maybe you had those I hate the effect, but I also think that in certain places it's effective, and here it might be, where she's blinking in and out for everything. And eventually he screams again, and Joey thinks that, oh yeah, stop it. You need to stop this shit, Peter. And it turns out he's like, the vampire's chasing me. She's got my ass right now. And then so they go to find it. And then eventually, no, this is where Sammy gets bit because they're all trying to hold her down, and she beats up on Peter for a little while. She beats up on Frank. Joey tries to stab her with a syringe, but gets knocked away, and it goes behind a gated hallway, and she's got to play the, oh my God, I don't know, I can barely reach it, I need to get it. Meanwhile, they're all getting their ass kicked, and Sammy tries to stop her, and then that's when she bites Sammy, and then ultimately Peter comes in, knocks her over, holds her down, and they're able to stick the stuff in her neck, and then put her downstairs into the basement in an elevator cell. Right. And again, I think that this scene is also really great. And this is where Abigail reveals the truth about everything. That, yeah, that's her food. She likes to play. And she says that her dad doesn't pay attention to her. Right. And that her dad is tired of her. And that's why she does these things like this. She sets up these for herself. Nobody set them up for it. There is no money. And Peter too is there's no money. And Joey's like, duh, what did you think? Now that we're in here, you think there's really going to be money here? Basically, she goes to reach him. We learn that Frank was a past detective, but he got into life. They all have some type of dealings with Lazard in some way, shape, or form. So he infiltrated the gang to do detective work, but ended up liking the life and freedom that he got, to ultimately the story that supposedly is going around of something manhandling some detectives. Turns out that those were his partners. She did it to them, and he was there when they found the bodies, right? And they kind of played it off, and I like that. I think that that's pretty good because he plays it off in the beginning oh, it's just a myth. He never tells anything straight, so can you really believe what Frank has to say? Peter was, she called him stupid basically, and all he could really do was punch things and be a bodyguard. And he was a bodyguard for a crime family until he stole from some people, and those people have to be connected to Lazard and the crime family. And then you have Sammy, who, yeah, she started off skimming and using her hacking skills to skim money from her parents, and eventually started skimming it from all different bank accounts, but she did the wrong bank account. We don't learn what Dean did, and we don't learn what Rickles did, right? I wish you would have said something about them, but now that they're dead, who gives a fuck? That kind of sucks. I really wish he had gone, well, Dean, he, thought he was the best wheelman in the world until he got in an accident and gave himself brain damage and killed one of the most trusted officials of the Lazard Empire. Some shit like that. And that's why she's getting revenge on him, even though he's dumb. right? And, whatever happened, William being a disgraced, Marine or something that fell in with the wrong people after he got dishonorably discharged or some shit. Like, I just wish we had more information. So then we get to Joey, and it turns out that Joey was a part of the Army or Marines, was a medic in the Army. I'm not sure exactly what division she was from. She basically got injured and then got hooked on morphine and then couldn't break the morphine addiction and then came back and she tried to get herself clean, and when she did that she broke off contact with her son. And there's a scene where Abigail tries to ask her more information about her and asks if she has children, does she have a son, and this is where you realize that yeah, she knows everything about you and she's just like toying with your heartstrings to get you to do things for her that she wants, to manipulate her, right? Because she knows everything about her. So she explains everything, and then you have her like basically what you have here is you have Abigail like go through them one by one, and then you have Joey, Peter, and Sammy. She wants Sammy to watch Abigail, but Sammy doesn't want to be down there. She's like, I don't want to deal with this shit, and so she goes up with them because they're gonna try to find. Oh, they want to find a way out and something to do. So Frank decides to watch, and then you have a good cat and mouse game. I should say too about the first fight with Frank and Peter and Sammy and Abigail. I like the choreography of it. I love the fact that she's like, when they first get in the room, she's dancing with the corpse of Dean, and his headless body. And she does like these moves with him that it's just funny. Again, that's where I think that the actress that plays Abigail, Alicia Weir, she's fun to watch in these scenes. And then the ending of the movie, when we start getting to the end, it's terrible because now we're just getting everybody basically picked off one by one. We get Sammy, she's bitten, she's worried she's going to turn to a vampire. And there's a funny scene where like, Peter and her, they're going to be the ones split off to go look for, because Sammy figures out that, hey, I can get us out of here if I can find the power and I can basically reset the power, which would open all the shutters and everything like that. Also, a lot of time has passed. The time of this movie passes by relatively quick because by the time that they have her downstairs and then they go into the library, it's daytime because the sun is flowing through one of the light fixtures above. And also, there is, like I said, there's a good cat and mouse game between Frank and Abigail where Frank is trying to find out from her, hey, how do I get out of here? Maybe if you tell me, I'll let you live. And one of the things that she does say about him is that he has to be in control. And that's very important as we get towards the end of the movie. She's like, no, and it's a great scene too. Like, look, if two of you let me out, I'll let two of you live. And Peter's like, which two? She's like, oh, that's the game, And then eventually she brings it down to one, and she's like, whoever does it lets me live. And Peter's about to do it, and so Joey shoots Peter after she said that she will, and then like she grazes him, but she goes. That's why they leave to go get the bullet out and to clean him up, because she can fix that type of thing. So you have them downstairs and they're going back and forth about, who's, if you can let her out. No, you're not going to, you're going to kill me the moment you do this. So why don't you just tell me how to get out of here, and then I'll think about letting you out, until eventually where she tells him what he needs to do, go to the library and find a book from Agatha Christie. And then she basically pulls on him like, look, these things can't hold me, and breaks open the cage, and that's eventually where, we find out that sunlight definitely is dangerous to the vampires, because she's got Frank on the ground. She's about to bite his neck. And that's when Joey comes and sees it and pries open some of the boards. Sunlight comes down and hits her hand, and it just fucking explodes blood all over the goddamn place. And then you get a close up of her hand where it's all like jacked up, and then it slowly starts regenerating. So she knows that the vampires here can regenerate. Sunlight's bad, but they just don't know about the stakes, but we're going to find out about stakes in just a little bit. That's when they all gather back in the library. They figure that they can stay in the sun. Joey thinks that they can break through the walls. They can't really break through the walls. And, they decide that, that's when Sammy figures out, oh yeah, if I can reset the power, I can reset all the windows and doors and we can get the fuck out of here. Also, she's worried about turning into a vampire, but she steps into the sun. Nothing happens to her. She's like, whew. All right. So the bite from Abigail doesn't do anything to me. That's what we think. They split up, and then we end up going, and we have like a relatively heartfelt scene between Peter and Sammy, where Sammy's scared of what's going on. And he's just like, no, I know that you're a good person.
I'm good person too. We have people we love. You have people we love. We'll make sure you get out of here. Like, and this guy, the guy that plays Peter, which is Kevin Durand, looks like he looks like Elon Musk. I couldn't break the thought, like a muscular version of Elon Musk, and it totally took me out of the character. But I thought that the actor was pretty good in doing the role of Peter. I think Peter's a decent character, but unfortunately Peter has to die because we find out that yes, actually the bites from the vampire do turn people into vampires, but it becomes their vampire slave, right? So they have to obey. They're the master. So Abigail's the master of Sammy, gets Sammy to kill Peter in a good, like, ballet. Like, you see her doing the ballet and it's controlling the movements of Sammy, and I think it looks pretty good, but I don't really like the makeup and the teeth and everything. I just not a big fan of the vampire teeth the way they do. Instead of him having, them having the two fangs and looking like a more normal mouth, everything, all the teeth are spiky and they almost look like a Tarkatan. If you've ever played Mortal Kombat, Baraka, like the way that his teeth look, that's the way the vampire teeth look in this movie. It's not great, but it's not terrible either. So she kills Peter. It sucks that Peter has to die, but again, everything here is relatively fun, and that's when Joey and Frank walk upon her, and there's a cool scene where like they're coming, and then she's like, oh, 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 and she turns around, puts her back to them, and that's where she pretends like she's still Sammy, and Joey's really wary of it, and eventually Sammy turns on them, runs after them, and then you got a great scene, like probably the last really good scene in the movie is where Sammy's running at her, and there's a like a silver plate that's on the ground, a silver tray. She grabs it and reflects the sunlight and explodes her when they do it. Like, it's good. I enjoy it. Nice and nice, lots and lots of blood, and it's just kind of works. So after this happens, this is where the movie goes, just in my opinion, like downhill. This is where it just kind of gets stupid. I don't know why they went down this route. I don't get it. I don't think it's a good route to go down. I think that there could have been different changes in the way that they handled this part. So they go down the hallway. They run into Giancarlo Esposito, and when they run into him, they find out that he's in the control room for the whole house, and he's been watching everything. And Giancarlo, Joey's like, "Why would you do this?" And then he grabs her by the neck and slams her against the wall, and it's like, "I've got a deal for you." And she's like, "I'm not taking any deals." He's like, "It's not for you." And he looks right at Frank and basically says, "Frank, if you let me turn you into a vampire, and I'll give you some of my blood." And it's weird because that, I guess, there are two different ways that you can become a vampire in this world. One, you get bitten and then you slowly transform into a vampire, but you're sired to the vampire that bit you, or you do the violent way, which is you get your blood sucked out and then you drink the blood of the vampire, because he likes, drinks. Frank agrees. It's like, fine, let's do it. Bite me, and so he bites him, and then he makes him drink from his wrist, and then that's where he throws up all the blood. But you can tell it's CGI, and that just looks bad in the way that it's done here. Like the other stuff, her exploding, Sammy exploding, the hand exploding, I get it, but they're just explosion effects. They're fine, and there's still plenty of blood because it looks like they actually like spray blood all over the people. It's not like we have fake blood and then it's CGI blood that's still on the clothes and stuff like that. It's like really thick and syrupy, and yeah, it looks fine. So I forgive it. But here, I just the throw up is just not. It just doesn't work for me in general. So Frank is now a vampire, and then Frank kills Lambert because he says, "That's for you, double crossing me and leading me into this." Because he does explain that, hey, I went and got out of you guys. You guys were there's no money, and there's you're all basically her playthings, which he also explained down in the basement as well. I don't know why we had to have it here, and he's tired of living underneath him because this is all he does now. She turned him 2 years ago, and all he does is go get the food and playthings that she wants, and he's tired of doing that. But as vampires, they could take over the whole mob family. They could do that with their powers. And I'm like, how would you do that? You only got turned 2 years ago, and that's not enough time for you to become as powerful as Abigail. And I don't know anything about her father. Is her father a vampire? Is it really her father? I don't fucking know. But all I know is that Abigail's probably been around for longer than 2 years as a vampire, so she might be a lot stronger than the other people. So she pops up so he kills Lambert, right? And then he's like, he's gonna go basically and drink the blood of Joey. And it's like, what? And that's when Abigail shows up and he's able to overpower Abigail right away. I understand that she doesn't realize that he's a vampire, right? And that like she thinks that they just killed him and that she's still powerful. So she's being a little cocky here and he kind of gets the drop on her. But like he still should have gotten his ass kicked by Abigail, right? And so, and the other thing is that there's something that happens towards the. I'll explain when it comes to the end because it just doesn't make any sense. So I don't get the whole thing with Frank. Like why all of a sudden like yeah okay he's a narcissist or he needs to be in control and so that's why he's gonna become the vampire. Oh, that's the way he's gonna get rid of Abigail. And then he thinks like they get into a fight, right? And he beats the crap out of Abigail. He like throws her to the ground, drinks her blood, and then Joey runs away with her cell phone, calls her kid, And there's one really great scene with Frank, and they're talking about kids, and he's like, everybody thinks that they have a sob story with the kid. Everybody's got to have some sort of sob story. Why don't you just fucking man up or woman up to the situation, apologize to your kid, say it was a fuck up, own it, but that you want to be their parent and you want to be there with them. And what's funny is that then after he said that to her, which I agree with, then we find out that he left his child and he's running away from his kid too. And it wasn't because he wanted to protect the kid, he just ran away from his kid, right? Unlike her, she wanted to protect her son from what, she had become and not have him exposed to that. It's like, yeah, okay, I actually appreciate the line, but he's a piece of shit because he's not living that line, right? For what he's saying. So they get into the fight, after she leaves the message for her son, about how much she loves him and yada, yada, yada. And then, they're fighting down there and you think that maybe this fight's just going to be between the two of them. But no, of course, Abigail comes back. And again, this is where it's kind of stupid. Yeah, maybe she's weaker because she lost some of her blood, but she should still be able to outpower him some. Like in any type of vampire lore, when you have a vampire that's 3,000 years old versus a 100-year-old vampire, they do specifically mention something about that at the end of everything that's going on. So, you think that she would have the moves. I get it. She's a little kid vampire. She's not a grown adult vampire. Maybe a grown adult vampire could just wipe the floor, but because she's a little kid. But still, somebody that's, even if, let's say she was 50 years old, she'd have more, experience than he has as a vampire. But he's able to just automatically do all the stuff that makes vampires cool and all this stuff. And so eventually, he beats her up. He sucks out more of her blood, but he's got to drain her to kill her if he wants to kill her as a vampire. And there's one point, and it's so stupid. This is just the worst. Like, they team up, right? Abigail and Joey team up to now fight Frank because Frank has become the big antagonist of the movie. He is the big bad because he decided to become a vampire and he's going to be the one he needs to. And he's got like Abigail in like a chokehold at one point, and then she just goes like this to Joey. Pinky promise. You remember you said he wouldn't hurt me, you pinky promise. You remember pinky promise? Fuck you. And I even said out loud in the theater, I was like, this is so fucking stupid. Like, why? Why are they going to become friends now after Abigail's tried to kill her the whole time? And then here comes fucking Frank, becoming uber vampire with no fucking training and everything like that. And so, he ends up beating up more on Abigail. And he ends up, he puts at one point of like a fire poker through the arm of Joey and pins her to a thing. And then when Abigail's doing that, she's trying to release stuff, but she can't do it. So he goes over there and he pulls her from the from the poker, throws her on the ground, and then he bites her neck, thinking that he has made her his sire, right? And so he commands her, go pick up the wooden stake, go get up on your feet, go kill her. And then when she's gonna go over to Abigail and about to stab her, she turns on him because she hasn't turned into a vampire yet. Like as we learned with Sammy, it's not going to happen right away. It takes a little bit of time before things go down, and then she actually has to control him. And then Abigail ends up jumping on his back or some shit, and eventually Joey fucking stabs him. Wow. Okay, so he dies. And again, like that's why I talk about like vampire strengths, because when she does it and she grabs him, she says you don't get to learn the cool vampire shit until you've trained for a little while, right? Basically, you're not going to get this shit right away. You're going to learn to do that. You have to teach yourself how to do that, right? That's what hundreds of years of training has taught me. Okay, so your 100 years of training should have beat the shit out of Frank. Okay, that's it. And then the other thing is that because she got bit by Frank, then she looks over at Abigail and she's like, is anything going to happen to me? She's like, no, you'll be fine. You've killed him, so nothing's going to happen to you. Wait, but didn't Lambert bite him and then Lambert died? Like, if you're going to go into the world, and I get you could say, oh, well, he drank Lambert's blood and like erased him, but even in a lot of vampire lore, different vampire lores, different people, different vampire strokes for different vampire folks. Like, you kill the main vampire, and then the sires or whomever you have, your underlings that you've created, all become back to human in some cases. In other ones, I get it. There are some where, like D&D vampires. D&D vampires will stay a vampire forever unless they can find a real cure, right? So maybe they follow that logic. But if you follow one, how is it that when you just sire somebody and you turn them into a vampire, because that's what she did to fucking Sammy, and that's what was going to happen. Like, you kill the head vampire of that, then you don't have to worry about it. Before she turns me, I don't fucking know. I just was like, I don't fucking get it. So you think the movie's over. She's saved Abigail. Abigail's going to let her go. And she's like, there's a smile thing. Oh yeah. Tell your son, she uses the name Justin because she's like, she makes up for her. And then she turns out, his name is Caleb. And Abigail's like, I know. And that's when Abigail's father shows up, played by Matthew Good. I thought it was Jeremy Irons because it sounded like Jeremy Irons, but it turns out it's Matthew Good. And so he comes in as her dad and basically is like, look, I'm here to help. I heard you were kidnapped. I'm here. And before, she was like, my dad doesn't want anything to do with me, And then here he is, he's like, look, I do want it, but I'm here to help you when you need help. Basically saying that he still does care for her. Cares for his vampire daughter after all these years. And then he's going to eat Abigail, but not Abigail. He's going to eat Joey, but Joey, saved her life, so Joey gets to go on free. And the end of this movie just fucking sucks. That's it. Like, she gets out of there, she gets in the fucking van, she leaves. That whole Frank turning into a vampire and then turning on them, and then Abigail and Joey have to fucking, like my cousin said, bitches unite in the theater. And she said that, right? Because like the Avengers type thing. But like then they have to go against Frank. Like, if I had my way and I was the one writing this movie, I probably would have done tricks Carlo Esposito, I keep saying Carlo, but Giancarlo Esposito, to turning him into a vampire so that he turns on him and then he uses his powers to fight Abigail. And by killing Abigail, then they're free. He's free of the curse and they leave off together. That would have been fun. Yeah, is he a dick? He's a fucking dick. Maybe he would have turned like this, and I guess that's the thing, but I don't buy it with everything that they're going through and how they're doing everything. Yeah, there's one off like comment when she's like, oh, Frank just loves the freedom, and Frank is just all about that lifestyle, and he always wants to be the one in control, and that's the whole reason why he's going to do this. Like, I don't get it. So, like I said, it still has fun parts. Again, the middle is really fun. Just the ending is dumb. It's just really dumb. And, if you want to see it, go see it. Otherwise, I'd wait for this one on VOD. See it that way. I see on IMDb it's got a 7 out of 10. I feel like that's a little high. I kind of feel like if you're an IMDb rating, it should be like a 6, maybe a 5.5. I could be completely wrong. And I think that it's just the slowness of the beginning of the movie and just the terrible choices to end the movie, I feel ruin it. But the middle of this is so good that it keeps it at a 3. If it hadn't been so good, this would be at a 2 for me. I just have been like, it's just your every movie. And you got to remember my rating system, right? Where 1 is that it truly is absolute garbage. No one should see it. Why did this movie get made? And then 2 is kind of like, it's not great, but it's got redeeming qualities. 3 is kind of your average movie for me. It's like, this is good. This isn't bad. For some people, that might be a 70% being at a 3, right? If I was on a scale, it might be a little different, but here a 3 is an average. 4 is a great film. 4 is a must-see film that you should go out and you should make sure you spend your hard-earned money, see it any way that you can. Where 5 is an ultimate classic, right? This is going to be a classic movie for all to see. Where this one sitting at a 3 is just, it's an average movie. It's harmed by its slow beginning with some really interesting ideas and well done. And just, again, not to beat a dead horse, but I really wish they had made those changes to the trailer that didn't ruin the fact that she's a vampire. If they didn't say she was a vampire and they just would have mentioned vampire, like, oh shit, they kidnapped this girl and then there's a vampire that's loose in the house where they go, man, that's crazy. And then you find out that Abigail is the vampire. Hey, more power to you. And then it's just ruined by the ending. I just think it's so dumb. Especially that stupid Pinky thing, where she's reaching out. She's being held down. Don't forget our Pinky. Promise. Stupid. She's not saying anything like that, but that's the way she's holding it out. So, and then it's weird too at the end. Well, not so weird because your teeth are like normal when she's like being nice to her. And she, of course, lets her live. I knew that she was going to be the only survivor. It was just a matter of how was everybody going to die. And, and then it's Joey that's like trying to stab him in the chest, Frank in the chest after he's been knocked to the ground with the wooden stake that created the pole cue. And then Abigail comes in and uses some of her extra power along with and the power of friendship to defeat Frank. Ugh. And then his body explodes everywhere and he's like, oh fuck. And it's just, like I said, it's not terrible, but it's not great. So that was Abigail. So I hope you guys enjoyed this review, and make sure that if you're not following me on other socials, you do. There's facebook.com/Terrible Terror Podcast. I'm out there on Twitter, T_T_podcast. The Terrible Terror Podcast is available every other week, and the next episode after this recording, I'm going to be looking at Stay Alive. So if you want to listen to that, you can check out that. That'll be released the following weekend after this has been released. If you're watching this 2 weeks from now, then the podcast is already out. I release every other week, right? And so this just happens to be a Saturday that it's not a release date where the following week is going to be. So, but there's always a mini episode where you can listen to a couple of things that I talk about and then what the movie is going to be for that week. But I'm telling you here, if you're watching this. So thank you guys once again. And we'll catch. Oh yeah, always forget. Make sure if you want to come by and you want to talk horror, you want to just chill out. Play some games, do some other things. I was doing some music stuff the last couple of days. So if you want to come by, chill, chat, join me over on twitch.tv/Terrible Terrors. All right. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I guess we're gonna catch you another time on one of these video reviews. So bye guys.